What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Team Officials YouTube channel. So, this week is the Pokemon World Championship, right? We haven't had one since 2019. That means 3 years ago, we crowned Henry Brand as our champion. If you watched the video yesterday, we commentated over that World Championship. So, for the next 3 days, what we're going to talk about is what do I think is going to win Worlds? Who do I think is going to win Worlds? And how can we watch or when is Worlds, right? And I guess, yeah, right? What will win, who will win, and when will Worlds be? So those are big three things that we're going to talk about in the next 3 days. So actually, the World Championship starts on Thursday, and the Thursday is like a day 1 kind of event. Anybody who has a day 1 invite can play. Anybody who goes X and 2 will go into day 2, which will be on Friday. And then once Friday plays, they're cut to a top 8. It's going to be what is it called? Asymmetrical cut or something like that, where like the person that has that's an 8th place, if they have let's say 15 points, then 8th through 10th or 8th through whoever also has a 15 points will also make cut. So you will not bubble out of Worlds this year, which is pretty cool. Something we've been wishing for a long time. Now the debate is, do we want to cut to top 32, top 8? That's a whole nother debate. But it is cool that we will see more players have a chance of making it to top 8. And then on Saturday we'll play all those rounds until we have a finals, and then Sunday will be finals only for every thing happening, because there's like 5 or 6 different things happening for the Pokemon World Championship, right? You got Pokken, you have TCG, VGC, you got Unite, Go. So there's 5 different tournaments happening this weekend, which is pretty crazy. But the question of today is, what will win Worlds, right? And that's a pretty interesting thing that people have always talked about, right? What will win Worlds? So we're going to look at 2 different interesting websites. We're going to look at both Limitless websites, right? We're going to look at the Limitless TCG and look at the Play Limitless TCG and the regular Limitless TCG. And the first thing we will look at is what has been the most played decks. Well, we have Palkia and Teleon, we have RC Teleon, and Mew Genesect. Now, both these decks have done pretty well, even at NAIC. RC is technically won. It was RC's Pikachu, though. RC's Flying Pikachu, which we see in 7th place, won. But Palkia and RC's Teleon were everywhere. They did really, really good. And I don't think that they will win Worlds, though. I don't think they'll win Worlds. That's what I'm just going to put out there. I don't think either one of these decks are going to win. And the reason why I don't think they're going to win is because they are the most anticipated decks going into Worlds. So when you look at Worlds Championship, you're looking at a very smaller player base, right? You're not looking at hitting all these random decks, right? You're not looking at, random Stonejourner or something, which Stonejourner might actually be good if the field is all RC's Palkia, right? You're not gonna hit these random decks that can destroy you. So that's the big thing is you're gonna have just really, really good decks. And so people are going to be more aware of Palkia and Arceus just because they are the most played decks. And don't get me wrong, they will definitely still be the most played decks going into this weekend. Palkia and Arceus, they will be everywhere. But I don't think any of them will win because if you're a player going to Worlds, you have to test this matchup, right? You have to test this matchup. Just notice there's this image just floating. Okay, there we go. You have to test this matchup. So the players that are playing these other decks that are not Arceus and Palkia are going to come there and surprise their opponents and win. Now, day 1 might be a little bit different. Day 1, you want to pick a secret deck, or you don't want to play your secret deck unless you just really want to make day 2. Then you could just play day 1, and then day 2 it could be ruined and everybody knows about it, and then you can switch, because between day 1 and day 2, you can switch your decks. That is a big thing to note. But once after day 2 starts, you can't switch your deck anymore. So, usually you want to keep your deck really consistent for day 1. Maybe day 1 you do put Palkia, or you play Arceus, right? You play something super consistent, and you try to make that X2, right? You just try to win and go from there. But even then, you can play something, maybe play Dialga, maybe play Calyrex, something that's still somewhat popular that have good matchups against them, and then maybe you could make it into cut that way. So I think day 1 will be Palkia, Arceus will make it to top day 2. But when we cut down to top 8 into the finals, stuff like that, I don't think either one of them are going to win. They might make top 8, but I don't think they'll win. Unless something happens and the deck that as a secret comes in and bricks. Could be a big deal. And the reason I'm talking about this, what we're going to look at first is let's look at past World Championships. Let's look at last year's quote unquote 2019, and if you notice, top 8, right? Out of top 8, you have a Restroom Charizard, Restroom Charizard, Restroom Charizard. So you see Restroom Charizard, and you look at it like statistics, right? Let's see if we can pull this up real quick. The most played deck, Pikachu.com. It is not. It is like only one in the top 8, right? That's crazy. You see them all down here because people knew that deck was good. People were prepared for that. Went too far. Oh, went the wrong way. Restroom Charizard, number 2. Malamar, number 3. So Restroom Charizard, once again, it did make top 8, but both the decks that won and got second, or not any decks that were that very high on the list, right? You have Malamar, number 3. Malamar, where is Malamar even at? That is a question. And yeah, I mean, Malamar Giratina is 32nd. There's a 24th place one. But yeah, if you notice, Malamar's not even owned here. That's how, that's not very good. But then Mewtwo, we had 10 players playing it. And we had 8 players playing Buffleon. And if you notice, one of those decks was Henry Brand playing Mewtwo and Mew. And also, 7th place was Mewtwo and Mew. So it's very interesting. Can we see what they played against? No, unfortunately we can't. But it's interesting that once again, you see decks that weren't the most popular win. That's because they were ready. They were ready for the Pikachu. They were ready for the Malamar. They're ready for the Reshizar decks, right? They are ready to beat this stuff, which is pretty cool that the deck that only saw 22 or 10 beat these other decks, right? That's pretty crazy to see. Yeah, why is this? This should be switched up here, right? Anyways, so that is last year's, right? And that's not only the first year we see that. Let's look at 2018, right? Let's look at statistics once again. We'll open it this way. This was kind of hard to see, and the reason why is because that Zoroark won Worlds, but there's different versions of Zoroark, right? So Zoroark Garbodor, there's Zoroark Lispod, Zoroark Glade, Zoroark Garbodor, Zoroark Garbodor. So actually, this might be the only year where this kind of is different. I didn't think Zoroark Garbodor was that big, but it's kind of hard to tell because Zoroark's kind of cut in there, right? This might be the bad year to kind of look at the kind of stats because, like I said, Zoroark, it's really just that Zoroark. There's 10 places, but within those 10, like, you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Zoroark Garbodors. Whoa, Robin Schultz was first, and his brother Philip was 32nd. They got first and 32nd, yo. But anyways, I think this might be a bad year to talk about this, because, like, next up is Rayquaza, which had 6. I mean, it still made top 8, right? And the thing about Rayquaza is, like, it's only Rayquaza. It doesn't have any friends. Rayquaza. Zoroark still beat that deck. So I would say that Rayquaza was probably the most played. Then let's look at Buzzwole. Buzzwole had 8 placements, right, if you combine them together. I know they are a little bit different, right? You have Buzzwole Lycanroc, you have Buzzwole Garbodor. So once again, it's kind of a little bit different. This is kind of the worlds where like, you can play different things and, like, it would do well, right? Because, like, Buzzwole Garbodor, Buzzwole Lycanroc, Zoroark, different friends, stuff like that. But if you were to ask people, I think they would definitely say, like, Buzzwole was probably the most played deck, and Rayquaza was probably the most played deck. But, like, Zoroark definitely, is up there, stuff like that. So it's kind of a little bit different. We won't count the 2018 World Championships because it's a little bit weird, right? So let's go ahead and look at 2017. Let's look at this one. Let's see if it's the same thing. I think this one's actually one that does really well. So if you notice, once again, it's kind of weird. It just says Garbodor is, like, the most played deck. But let's look at top 8, right? You do have a bunch of Garbodors. You have Gliscon Garbodor, Espeon Garbodor, Gliscon Garbodor, Garbodor Necrozma, Espeon Garbodor, Gardevoir, and Drampa Garbodor. Once again, Gardevoir, you scroll down, Gardevoir, and that's it. I know it says there's 4, but I don't know where the other ones come into play. We only see 3, right? Because this is Gardevoir and Sylveon. 1, 2, 3. So we're missing 1 somewhere. Maybe this includes, like, all top 64 or something like that. But either way, Gardevoir, if you were to talk about 2017, you say, oh, Gardevoir's going to win Worlds, people would have thought you were crazy because if you thought Gardevoir was going to win Worlds, because there was Garbodor everywhere. There's Gliscor Garbodor, there was Espeon Garbodor, there was Gliscor Garbodor, there was Garbodor Necrozma, Espeon Garbodor. And Diego came in and was like, yo, I know how to beat these Garbodor decks. And he found a way to do it with his Gardevoir deck, with the 4-3 Curly with 3 Gardevoir. That's pretty good. The 2 Field Blower. So Diego, knowing that Garbodor was going to be the most played deck, he built his Gardevoir deck to beat these Garbodor decks, which is fantastic. So that's another indication of like, hey, we know that Garbodor is going to be the most played deck. How do we counter that? Well, Diego found a way with Double Field Blower. It took down the competition. So once again, not a deck that people really expected. People didn't know about Gardevoir, but people did not expect it to win, right, or do well. So let's look at 2016, Shintaro's year. Shintaro's probably the most, the biggest one, because if you look, Megalodino 2. We know that Megalodino did win. Greninja got second. We had 3. And this is actually a really good call by Shintaro. Once again, Shintaro playing Megalodino was a direct counter to Night March. Direct counter to Vespiquen. It could beat the Greninja deck, right? Bronzong, I don't know how that matchup pretty much goes. That was a pretty interesting one because Bronzong plays like Aegislash and stuff like that. I imagine it's probably a bad matchup. Shintaro must have not have hit it. And even then, like in top 8, like Gustavo Watto is the only one in top 8 with Bronzong, which is probably a bad matchup. But everything else, like it's a good matchup. You don't really care about Vileplume too much, right? Does Vileplume have a way to make it where, I guess Glaceon could do that, but does Magearna prevent that? I think Magearna might prevent that, right? Prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks, except damage done to each of your Pokemon that have any metal energies. So I think Magearna would get around the Glaceon effect, right? Because Glaceon says, during your opponent's external all damage done to Pokemon by attacks from your evolution Pokemon, but then does Magearna get rid of that effect? I don't know. But either way, Shintaro has some great matchups, like Greninja, Vespiquen, Greninja, Night March Vespiquen, Bronzong not so much, Night March. Maybe Ocania might be kind of shaky, just because they put so much damage output. But either way, Shintaro said, alright, I know that Night March is going to be the most played deck. I can take that down. I know Vespiquen's going to be really played. I can take that down. Greninja, I can take that down. So Shintaro, once again, saw the competition and said, you know what? I'm going to play this deck that's going to beat the other decks. And that's what we saw in 2015. So we see this, trend of, I'm going to play a deck that beats everybody. Once again, 2015, Jacob Van Wagner, right? If you look at stats, look at them again. Blastoise, 3 Blastoise players. If you notice, there were 7 Night March decks. So what does Jacob do? Well, Jacob puts an Articuno in his deck with Delta Plus, taking additional price cards. He puts cards like Wailord EX with 250 damage that you have to 2-shot with the Night March per Pokemon. So Wailord gets double use, right? It gets 2 knockoffs before you make it do anything. And then you're just really fast because you're Blastoise. And like I said, Articuno has taken multiple price cards, had no problem with it. Jacob just took down a bunch of Night March. And then outside of that, your next up is going to be Seismitoad, right? Seismitoad 6 plays. Jacob said, I don't care. I'm just going to load up Mewtwo's to one-shot you, or I'm just going to load up Giant Keldios, which is a direct counter. And don't keep me wrong, if we do miss this, you are in trouble, right? If you miss the turn on Blastoise, but the inclusion of Articuno with Chilling Sigh, putting Seismitoad to sleep, if they stay asleep to go back in your turn, then you can actually use your item cards and get out that Blastoise. Once again, Jacob playing a very counter deck to this format. Once again, you're going to beat Seismitoad Crobat because of Articuno. You're going to beat Night March because of Articuno. And then everything else, Keldeo is just going to go ham and just take knockouts. So another really cool deck that we see. I think 2014 is probably the only year that this I'm going to counter the meta doesn't really work. Because Virizion Genesect had 9 counts. I guess Evital was the most played deck, right? And I don't think Andrew or Igor included anything really to maybe double Tool Scrapper to beat Garbodor. Igor also played, he only played 1 Tool Scrapper. So I think this might be the only year where that theory doesn't work, right? Where the most played deck doesn't do well. But even then, if you look at it, Virizion Genesect, there's only 1 Evital Garb in top 8. Once again, it did do well, right? It got, top 32 and stuff like that. But it didn't win because people were ready for it, right? They were ready for Evital. So once again, we see this trend of like, okay, I'm gonna play a deck. Let's look at Jason Kozlowski, Darkrai Sableye. This might be another one where, well, actually, I think Jason was the only one really playing the Sableye version, right? We see Team Plasma, Blastoise. Look at top 8. There's a Darkrai Garbodor, which is like the more popular version of Darkrai that year. Plasma. So Plasma was the highest deck, right? And that worked out really good for Jason because Jason did play, the 2 Enhanced Hammer, Sableye get back it, and then you kind of beat the number 1 deck that year, which was Plasma. Really good thing. I don't know how the Blastoise matchup versus with Jason works. That's probably a bad matchup for Jason. Maybe. I don't know. It's weird. It's probably a bad matchup, though. But Plasma, you're going to destroy Plasma, right? That's good. It gets to mirror. You have, like, Sableye to get back certain stuff, which is good, because usually in these, like, Darkrai Garbodor decks, they're all playing the one Sableye. So that's really good. You have more outs to your Sableye, stuff like that. But yeah, Plasma being the biggest deck that year, I imagine we took on the competition. If you notice, Dustin did well with his Sableye Garbodor deck, which is kind of the same as Jason, right? But yeah, Jason once again had a answer to the most popular deck. Plasma took down the competition, did some things, and then finally we have 2012. Sorry, we have 2 more left. This one, we don't count this one. This one's totally different. It's a Darkrai meets a Darkrai. I guess in hindsight, like, Igor did play, like, Terrakion to counter the Darkrai decks, right? Because Mewtwo counter Mewtwo, and the Terrakion kind of the Darkrai part of it. So, like, Igor knew what the best deck was, and this is something we could maybe see going into this Worlds. Igor said, hey, Darkrai Mewtwo is the best deck. It is the best deck going into Worlds. How can I make my mirror match even better? He said, you know what? Put Terrakion in it. Put Terrakion. I'm just going to put Terrakion in it. And that one Terrakion definitely did a bunch of work. Oh, he played 2 Terrakion. Let's go. Did a lot of work. You can surprise people with, the Shaman and stuff like that. Really cool deck. So congratulations, Igor. And then in 2011, last one, we know it was won by David Cohen with his Magnet Zone inboard deck. But it kind of follows the same suit. Let's go here. Let's go with this. Magnet Zone inboard, only 2 plays. David said, you know what? I know Rescue Explosion is the best deck. It's the most consistent. And Young Mega Magnezone is the second. How do we beat that? Well, I'll play Magnezone Emboar. And that's what happened. David, did the impossible. One with Magnezone Emboar, I think if you were to ask anybody before the tournament, they would have told you you're crazy. Because if you look at here right now, like, there's no other Magnezone Emboar. Right? There's none of that. Now, the unfortunate thing is, like, the real counter deck got second with Ross. Ross did not expect to play against a Magnezone Emboar deck, which is like its worst matchup. Like, imagine this was Rescue Explosion. This deck would have destroyed it. It would have beat it. But David playing a somewhat rogue deck, and then Ross playing a super rogue deck, had a really interesting finals where you had 2 rogue decks actually kind of going at it, which is pretty neat. So yeah, that's on the World Championship. It follows a solution, like, pattern of, like, we know what the best deck is. What deck can beat that? That's the question. And so now we have to start looking at the data we have now. We know Palkia is the best. We know RC is the best. We know Mew is the best. So what can beat all of those? Well, let's look at win percentage. And you start looking at that, Palkia and Teleon. In second place, actually, Arceus Duraludon. So let's look at Arceus Duraludon real quick. Now, these numbers are going to be somewhat skewed because these are not world, like, qualified people, right? These are not, the champions of champions, right? But if you start looking at win percentage, let's not look at that. Let's look at matches. Palkia and Teleon, you're winning 51% of the times. Arceus Teleon winning 43% of the times. Mew Genesect winning 47% of the time. Dialga, you're winning 50% of the times. Now, once again, the big thing to note is that, yes, it does have a bad percentage, but you got to remember how many people are playing this deck that have not really played Arceus, and they were able to have a somewhat positive record. It's not super negative, right? 43% against Arceus Teleon, right? It's kind of bad. But I think Arceus Duraludon versus Arceus Teleon, the Duraludon definitely has an advantage. So I think that's going to be a good indication of what we should do going to Worlds. Next up, you have Arceus Coco. I think that one is a really interesting deck too. Once again, look at matches. Palkia, you're 55% winning with that. Mew Genesect winning 40% 6% of times. Arceus Teleon, you start getting a little bit better, right? If once again, these are not world qualifying plays. CalArts Inteleon, you're winning 50%, 56% of the times, which I think it's going to be like in top 4 or 5th place of like most played decks. So, I mean, maybe Arceus Coco is going to be the best. I see Arceus Charizard in here. Matchups. Palkia, 34. Mew, 36. Arceus Inteleon, 55. So, I don't think Arceus Charizard, we'll count this one out. That's not a good one. Arceus Inteleon, we're not going to count this one. Because we don't really... Oh, we got to go this way. What am I doing? Yeah. So Palkia, we're not going to worry about. We're not going to pick Palkia. Maybe pick this one. Maybe it's this one. Arceus Ice Rider might be a good one. So let's go ahead and pull this up. Let's go to matches real quick. 54-64, but a 34% Mew Genesect. Ooh, that one really hurts. And the last one you look at is Arceus Mewtwo. So we are going to only look at Arceus decks. Because I think that an Arceus deck will win Worlds. I'm just going to say that now. I think Arceus is going to win Worlds. Question is which one, right? We start looking at here. I don't know why I did that again. I got to stop doing that. Palkia 59, Arceus 51, Mew Genesect 25. Not so good. Not so good. But maybe Mew is not as played. And if Mew is not so played, then we need to start looking at everything else. Arceus Ice Rider. So Arceus Coco, I think I am just going to veto. I don't think that one's going to get us. I don't think that one's going to get us there. So Arceus Coco, no, we're going to cancel that one. So now we'll look for Arceus Duraludon, 51-43. Arceus Ice Rider, 54-64. And we have Arceus Mewtwo, 59-51. And if I'm going anywhere, I think I'm putting my money on Arceus Mewtwo. I think Arceus Mewtwo does two things. It takes a deck that surprised us at NAIC, it upgrades it. It takes it, okay, I'm playing this stall Mewtwo deck, and I'm going to put it with one of the most consistent cards in the format, and that is Arceus. So I think Arceus Mewtwo will win Worlds. That's what I'm going to go with. I think Arceus Mewtwo, it can beat Arceus, it can beat Palkia, it can beat Arceus. You're super consistent. Mewtwo is just a good attacker, right? That's what we're starting to see. Mewtwo is just like fantastic. So I think if I'm picking a deck for Worlds, it's Arceus Mewtwo. We'll see what happens. That's how we got there. We looked at the decks that do well, which is Palkia and Arceus. We looked at the deck that do it somewhat well against them, Arceus Mewtwo. It's really consistent. Your best, you can only start with Arceus as well too, which is a big deal, right? I think that's the big thing here too. I think it is. Let's look at this first place list, right? Let's look at this image. You can only start with Arceus. You can only start with Arceus. So it's not like you have a bad start. You can't start with Mewtwo, which is fantastic. You have Hiding Potion plus double turbo to heal your Mewtwo's. Once you're set up, you're golden. So I think going to Worlds, if I was playing Arceus Mewtwo deck I'm playing, we're taking down the competition Arceus Mewtwo. I think that's going to be the deck to beat. I think that's going to be the BDIF of Worlds. And I think it's going to win. So outside of that, maybe Arceus Draw and Arceus Ice Rider. I think Arceus will win just because of how consistent it is. We saw that NEIC did win, and I imagine going to Worlds, it's going to win again. So yeah, guys, Arceus Mewtwo. That's the deck I'm picking. I'm picking to win. What are you going to pick to win? I mean, I do think top 8 will have Arceus, Palkia. Arceus Palkia are going to be there, right? Arceus Inteleon, just consistent build's going to be there. But I think Arceus Mewtwo is the way to go. It's going to win Worlds. And we'll see what happens. But guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something new about how Worlds kind of works. And how you really don't want to pick the best deck. Because the best deck is going to obviously be countered. Now, don't get me wrong. You can play the best deck and still make top 32. And that's all you're going for. And then you're good to go. So, but anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow where I make a prediction of who's going to win Worlds. Alrighty. Bye.